Thanks for joining us today. My name is Ben Stapley. I'm the Weekend Experience Director at Christ Fellowship Miami, and I also get a chance to coach and consult about leadership, creativity, and communication at benstapley.com. Today, I am surrounded with some incredible church leaders. These are people with theory and practice. They are putting themselves in the game, and they are applying what they are doing. Every month, we get a chance to talk about creating incredible weekend experiences, and today we are focusing on Christmas. Yes, it is never too early to talk about Christmas. Before we jump into the conversation, I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Greg.
Yeah, my name is Greg Reed. I have the honor of being at Christ Fellowship, not Miami, Christ Fellowship Palm Beach Gardens. Ben and I get mixed up often. I look after all of our creative teams, all of our weekend programming, and our event teams.
Hey guys, my name is Matt Goss, and I am on the East Coast, but way farther north. I'm in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I am not Amish, but I'm at LCBC Church. It stands for Lives Changed by Christ. We're a multi-site church. We have 15 locations that span across central Pennsylvania. Been on staff for 21 years. Started when we were a church of about 500, one location. So I've worn a lot of different hats. But I'm the worship pastor. I oversee our worship programming. I oversee all of our worship leaders. And I also oversee our tech as well.
I'm Michael Buckingham. I'm here in Atlanta at Victory Church. Now it's Victory Church. We just made a name change. I'm so grateful for it. It used to be Victory World Church, and couldn't do that for too long. But I am what they call the experience director. So I'm over and I lead the creative teams, the digital teams, the video teams, communications teams. Team of about 21, 22 right now. And I've been here for 10 years. And about 12 years before that, I still own Holy Cow Creative that works with churches and consults. And I still get to do a little bit of that. Not quite as much as I would like to sometimes, just because it's a big role here. But yeah, excited to be part of this conversation.
My name is Milenka Torres. I happen to work at Christ Fellowship Miami. I've been a member for over 13 years. I oversee the creative department, and I happen to work with Ben Stapley.
Guys and gal, thank you for joining us. It's going to be incredible. We're going to talk about your phenomenal Christmas ideas and the wild successes you have planned for your teams and your communities. But before we do that, I always find that I learn best through my failures or through the failures of others. So before we talk about what we're doing to succeed, tell me about one phenomenal failure of yours in relationship to Christmas in the past. Would love to hear and learn to avoid that down the road.
All right, I guess I'll jump in. Since we're talking failure, we've had quite a few over the years, but the one that immediately comes to mind is several years ago. It was right after like Jimmy Fallon started doing the toy band kind of stuff with the Roots. We thought that was such a cool idea. So we decided to kind of start with like a toy band, like little group thing idea that then would build into a larger band piece. But it was like synced with video and loops and all that sort of stuff. And we got out there, and one of the pieces was like this. We had this little Casio keyboard type thing that was supposed to start things off, and we got off on it, and we got off from the loops, and it was like, this is the opener, and it just went way south really fast. And all you could hear on the broadcast, like when everything just kind of drops out, you hear me go, ugh. I literally it was like, ugh. I had this moment
on mic.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And
Nice.
Then the band just kicks in, and we acted like it never happened and moved on with the rest of the gathering. But we immediately called the rest of our campuses and said, yeah, we're just going to cut that element and just start with the full band piece. So that was one of the failures. We tried.
Yeah. Probably one of my, we've been pretty fortunate. We haven't had a ton of huge disasters. We've had disasters, but we fixed them before the actual show. But we do every year. We do what we call Christmas Gift to the World. So it's a big offering. We give something locally and give something internationally. And it used to be you brought the gift up to a manger with baby Jesus. We got rid of that because it was a little churchy, a little cheesy. And so we then converted to these big, huge Christmas boxes. And man, for one thing, those things took because they were huge. They were, 4 feet by 4 feet. They were just gigantic. Took us forever to wrap them. And then just logistically getting people to those, because it's, we've got thousands of people that are trying to get their offering up. But the great thing about it, so it was a wreck. It did not go well. Matter of fact, so that was Saturday night service. We used to have a Saturday night service that we just got rid of. We moved it all to Sunday, but that was Saturday night. And so Sunday we scrapped it all and we moved everything digital, and we've never looked back. And our offerings have now gone up fivefold by going everything digital. So mistake, but a good one.
Very nice.
A few years ago, we had this, the whole Christmas theme was around light coming into the world. We kind of played a little more back on like John 1 and took that past at Christmas, a little bit different than normal Christmas stories. So this one part of the song, I can't even remember what song it was. We had this idea that at all the campuses, people would walk in. We were trying to find some kind of element that hit the crowd. So people would walk in with these massive balloons that kind of had lights in them. It was the idea that worked great for our campuses that had like 30-foot ceilings. Some of our campuses that we hadn't demoed them outright, they'd come and do the piece for the first time, first service out, and all the balloons start popping as they hit the low ceiling. And so people just start freaking out because they're floating up and they're just hitting the rafters. And so our campuses that had 30, 40-foot ceilings were great. The ones that were built in Targets, all the stars started hitting 18-foot ceilings and popping all over the place, and kept happening, seemed at the same time. So it was just, people thought it was gunshots. It just was, yeah.
That is not the gunshot sound effect in a service is never a good thing. Yes. Milenka, what about you?
Well, I can say, fortunately, we haven't had yet a huge big failure, but lessons learned for sure is not to, like, we had 1 year a Christmas element in which we had a spoken word guy narrating something, and on the side we were projecting a seed growing to a tree, and then the leaves, and then the snow, and it was a beautiful thing that had to be really synced. So we were able to, first mistake, we used that as an opener. And in Miami, unfortunately, people are not the most punctual. So we really put a lot of labor-intense hands into something that only 10 people enjoyed. So that was the first lesson. So we moved the next year, we moved that similar element to the middle of the worship service. But the second thing was, most of the service went well with that element, but some of them were out of sync. So you could see the guy talking and the tree doing something else, so it wasn't matching. Fortunately, it happened once or twice, I think, during our 7 services. But it was just very stressful because you will see the guy talking and the tree doing something else, and you're like, what do we do at this point? Just let it be, But fortunately, the 10 people that saw that were the ones that knew that was a mistake. But other than that, yeah, it's been good.
I normally like to create experiences that start with a bang, but I've learned at Miami, unless you want one person to experience it, you push that element farther into the experience, or no one's seeing it.
Ben, so what do you start with? Because I feel like we've learned the same thing. We've always put such a great element in the front, and some, Christmas Eve, everyone's there early, but all the other services the days before, sometimes you're doing it at random times, people don't show. What have you guys addressed and changed?
Usually it's an opening song. So we found the flow is like some type of opener, and crudely put to get people in the room. And then maybe bake in a hosting after that, a welcome after that,
so you're not
followed with.
You're not sinking huge creative resource into the first one out of the gate.
No, if we had multiple bullets that we thought were great, even the secondary one would be early. It wouldn't be that wow moment would not be within the first 10 minutes of the service. Yeah. For me, I have multiple Christmas fails to pull upon. But the one that stands out is it's the only time I've been booed from stage. And yes, I was booed on stage in a church setting. I already have you intrigued. What is the story? So it was my first year in ministry. I'd come from television in Canada, and I was now working in a church in New Jersey. And so I was doing the hosting, and we framed it kind of fish out of water story. It was a letter to home from me to parents up in Canada. And I was explaining all the differences that I was experiencing in New Jersey. New Jersey likes to take shots at itself. kind of make fun of themselves. And so it was some of those unique things. And the one thing I referenced was the high degree of roadkill that was on the street, because there's a lot of deers get hit and they sit around for a long season. And I was saying, family, all these animals are just sleeping by the side of the road. And I brainstormed this script with a bunch of other 20-somethings, and we all thought it was hilarious. We did not ask a parent what they thought their child would think of this moment, and especially as we're showing roadkill on screen behind me.
Oh.
And I get into it, and a dad with small kids just goes, boo. And I was like, okay, I'm wrapping this up, and we're cutting it from second service. So that was my biggest Christmas fail. But I have multiple to choose from. So that's the past. The future. I know we're all across the map in terms of our reopening plan, but I want to know from you guys, what's your plan in relationship to Christmas, if you know already? Are you open? Are you not? And then what was the thinking behind that as well?
Yeah, we're down here in South Florida. We are open. We obviously know that, for us right now, we're open, but we're online. So we're, as much as we have people in the room, we're going to continue to, make sure that online has a seat at the table, that we're thinking that way, that, there's plenty of times we're sacrificing even an in-room element to make sure online's great, or they're getting their own. So for us, we're open, we're in person. I think for us, the decision was really just even opening now. I mean, we've seen a really good return rate in attendance that's been hopeful. And I think just the extent, which you guys have probably all experienced if you've opened, just the experience of people getting to be on site. I was following these two ladies to the kids area this week, and I could hear them just like, I thank God that church is open, like just the need for it. So I think for us, it was an easy decision. Obviously it's still a decision that, in the middle of COVID, everything could be different in 3 months from now. So we're holding it lightly, and we're making sure we have backup plans, making sure that there's an outdoor venue backed up, things like that. But we're going to move forward so far in person and online.
Greg, are you still planning the same amount of services that you did for Christmas?
So we are actually, one of the things we're processing right now, some of our team knows this, we're processing maybe doing a bigger Christmas production, maybe earlier, to try to be able to space out, maybe even the week earlier, to try to space out to offer more services at more locations than because we are, like, I think like most of our Christmas services are pretty pinned to the wall at 110% capacity. So knowing that's not going to be the issue. So for us, we're basically looking at 50% capacities and then trying to figure out how many we have to offer. But we're also rethinking, maybe Christmas becomes a little more candlelight, and we're doing a larger production maybe the week before, just so we could offer more experiences, knowing that some churches in our region, some churches and events are already canceling, that do big Christmas spectaculars, they're already canceling. So knowing that we do have a place to kind of leverage that, and actually maybe provide the family that's used to going to see the Nutcracker, every year, that don't get to this year, trying to become the experience for them during this season, if we're able to.
It's a good idea. We are going all digital, and we're both digital and live right now. And we went that for a couple of reasons. One, Easter, we made a very last minute pivot is the word of the year, to go all online because of everything that happened. And it was just really, really accepted well. The amount of people that we got to see was astronomical. The tens of thousands of people that tuned in, and for a long period, like, they were with us. It wasn't just, the Facebook where I can, we got 150,000 people. Well, yeah, 150,000 people that drove by your church, but these were literally people who watched the whole service. So that was the big app, and we're still currently predominantly digital. We definitely have a lot more people, anywhere between 15 and 20,000 people digitally, versus a couple of thousand people here on site, because we on site we were only doing 2 services, 9 and 11, and then 1 and 5 is all digital. And so we've really scaled back on just the amount of people that we can let into the building. But then another big reason, honestly, was we use this as an opportunity to give our teams a break. Normally Christmas is all on, full bore, go, go, go. And you're like, you know what, we don't have to. Digital is working well for us. So let's go all in. So we're putting together Christmas Eve. We'll put together a 30 to 45-minute film that will kind of be a depiction of a Christmas at home and things of that sort. And then we'll do Christmas services online as well.
That's great, and that's phenomenal. I didn't even think about that, Michael. Thanks for explaining that option for people who aren't outside the box thinkers. That hey, you're reopened now, but you're gonna for that experience, focus all your energies there. When are you guys going public with that with the congregation?
We will start. Yeah, we will start talking about that in the next probably 3 weeks, maybe 4. Depending on when I get Kier ready.
And if they revolt?
They won't. I've been pretty impressed by everyone. Even when we went all digital, we didn't get a lot of backlash. And then even when we went digital and some people in person, we didn't get a lot of backlash either. We had a few people that were like, I can't believe you're doing this. And a few people like, I really miss being at church. Why can't you open? But we've been really pretty clear of we're going to follow the law, but we're going to listen to God. So, and we're definitely not a seeker-friendly church. I mean, our pastors are pretty to the point. So I think that helps as well. Just tends to be our culture.
Gotcha. Milenka or Mac, what are you guys planning?
We're moving, we're opening our doors October the 5th. We're excited about that. We don't know how people are going to respond, but we're expecting people coming in because they're really ready to come back to church. We've offered home gatherings as well, and people are doing their own church at home thing, and it's been successful. So I think we're going to have a good return. However, because Miami-Dade is the place where the highest numbers of COVID cases are reported and the deaths, we really need to just keep looking at the numbers and see if by Christmas people will still be scared to return, and like October the 5th is the date where schools are going to be reopening, but not at 100%. It's going to be a mix of a hybrid of online and on campus. So, and we need to see if after that there's another peak, because it happened here in Miami-Dade and it was really intense. So we had to go back and close things. We were about to reopen. We decided not to. I don't think that's going to be the case. Once we reopen, I don't think we're going to close again. However, we're planning our services for mostly the online audience because that's our biggest campus right now. But we're also going to think of in-person experience, just similar to what we're going to do for reopening. We're crafting an experience that on campus will be enjoyable, but it's going to be also successful online. So we need to start planning for sure.
Yeah. It's great hearing what you guys are all doing, for sure. We decided to open back in July, and it was kind of like a progression of reopening in some ways. And we started out with just only not bringing live bands back right away, no kid ministry. So we took what we were producing for online and we just made it available in the rooms just to see who would come. And it was a smaller amount of people at first. We also, at that point, started recording our online gathering in front of a live studio audience in some ways, like in front of a live crowd. So we started to invite that. We saw some decent numbers there. Now, I mean, it's all relative, right? Like before COVID, what we were expecting and what we thought were good numbers was one thing. And now we're like, oh man, we have 100 people. That's amazing, Yeah. So, I mean, prior to COVID, we were averaging around 17,000 in attendance across 15 locations. Now on the weekends, we're averaging around 2,800, 2,900 across all locations. And what we did say, we said, look, we're going to open at 25% capacity. So we started with the all on video. Then we brought our live bands back in August, and we definitely saw a bump at that point. We saw quite a few more people coming for that. And then we haven't opened kid ministry yet. We honestly believe that once we open kid ministry, we're going to see a much larger jump. And at that point, we may start to follow more of the 50% rule and say, hey, we can be okay with 50% capacity. So with that in mind, we decided we're kind of looking at that like October. We're planning on October, November. We wanted to follow the schools and see what happened, see if there were any major outbreaks. Schools opened a couple weeks ago here, and so far it's been okay. I mean, we've heard a couple handfuls of little cases here and there, but nothing crazy. So we're starting to think, well, maybe we could do kid ministry and do it safely. And we've been coming up with our plans for that. So with that thought, we thought we're going to be building this momentum. Let's continue that momentum and let's go ahead and do live in-person gatherings, but also let's do everything we can to elevate our online gathering as well. So we're trying to find some things just to make the online piece special and to almost view it's going to be the same gathering, but we're going to try to figure out what do the bells and whistles that work in a room are much different than what works online from what we're finding. And in the past, we used to just try to capture what happened in the room and make it available online. Now we are shooting directly for online. And that's been a real big shift for us, I'd say. Our communicators are talking direct to camera now. And we're just, there's a lot of little nuance types things that we're doing to try to value that. So what we said is, as we do, let's plan a great gathering for in person, but then let's also elevate online this year and just let them know that, man, we thought about you and we want to make this a great experience for you to engage in. Because right now, 85% of our people are engaging online, so it's much less in the rooms.
That's good. I want to hear how everybody's modifying their experience in contrast to last year. But before I do, I was there during your soft launch, Matt, 2 months ago up in PA. I creeped in to the side door and I was the guy booing in the background if you're looking for him. And so you just I think you dropped a really interesting hack with churches trying to be social distance and also manage resources. You talked about going your live band at your broadcast campus, but then it was video at all the other campuses. Couple of questions. First of all, how was that received? And then second of all, have you changed and added live bands back? And third, why did you add live bands back?
Yeah, well, initially what we were trying to do, even with our online band, originally we were utilizing just that local. What we were putting online was the Mannheim, our broadcast campus band. And pretty soon into COVID, we started putting local worship leaders. So our campus worship leaders, we started making a central band out of that team. So we've continued to do that. We record that on Saturday nights because we wanted campus representation. We wanted people to start to see their worship leader and even their campus pastor doing announcements, or we tried to incorporate some of those elements into our online recording. So that was received pretty well because people were still seeing their people in a lot of ways. And also for us, we broadcast the same message every week. So in a lot of ways, our locations are used to getting at least the teaching on video. Does that make sense? So that wasn't new for them. The only thing new initially was worship, having that on video. But even that we've done, occasionally we would do a special or something like that we felt was going to be better broadcast as a broadcast moment. We would do, so they were kind of accustomed to it. So it wasn't a huge thing, but we heard, like, the moment we brought back live bands in August, people were so excited and they were so glad to have their people back, and the players were so excited to come back and do music together. And it just definitely was a boost for us.
If you use any tracks, it doesn't count as real worship, Matt. You know that.
That's right.
Thank you for that. That's a super helpful new perspective of how to do worship during the season. So let's talk about. So we talked about when we're reopening with Christmas, the thinking behind that. If it's digital, physical, combination of both. Tell me more now of how the content, how the experience is going to be crafted differently because of COVID. As much as you guys know already, what does that look like?
Yeah, ours is going to be, especially Christmas Eve, will be dramatically different. We will shoot like I said, about a 30 to 45-minute film. It's going to be based in of someone's house. It will not, there'll be music in it, but it'll be more like someone playing the piano, and then that becomes a song. Maybe someone grab a guitar next to the fireplace and plays a song. Probably some carolers will come to the door and sing a song. So it'll have worship elements into it, but more be like a Christmas song that they're playing, and then that turns into a worship song. And then just some, dramatic scenes along the way. We're still writing it out, but and there'll be a sharing moment where our senior pastor, Johnson Bowie, will share, but more like you're in the living room hanging out and like, hey, thanks for coming in, and then sharing really the truth of Jesus. We might have somebody like, I don't get all that, and so there might be a little dialogue there. But Christmas Eve will be very, very different. Christmas services that weekend will likely follow a very similar pattern as we normally do on our Christmas services.
Got it. If you're looking for some inspiration, Michael, I don't know if you're aware, there's a Star Wars Christmas special from the late 70s. It's
Really?
Has anyone see that?
Yep.
It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess, first of all.
Star Wars Christmas. That's awesome.
But I think it's Chewbacca and his family, and they have a rotating cast of visitors coming to the front door for their.
Have I not seen this? This is incredible.
Oh my goodness!
That sounds amazing.
Your eyes will burn.
I might just scrap the whole idea to show that.
What about the rest of you guys? How are you changing your content this year?
I think for us, and we started doing this probably about 2 years ago, just realizing, I think we just, not that the Christmas story is bad, but I think realizing, like, how do we, especially with the data that's come out the last few years, that, hey, between Christmas and Easter, Christmas is really the only thing that brings in new people anymore. Like, Easter is becoming more and more kind of normal church. It's not a big invite. You may invite a lot, but people are way more likely to come to Christmas. So I think the thing we've been really the last 2 years of saying, yes, there's the creativity. Yes, there's a Christmas story, but how do we really speak to, like, how do we make it relate to their life? How do we make it practical? Especially knowing who's coming to our doors. So obviously the creativity and what we do, we want to make it something that they could relate to. Like last year, we filmed our whole message in New York City. We flew the whole team up, and we filmed like a bunch of the creative pieces, the whole entire message and it actually snowed the day we got there, which I'm from New York.
Nice.
Doesn't happen often. Literally, we got delayed getting there because it snowed. So it was literally Central Park and snow. So, but
in New York, because there's so much dirt as well, you got about 1 hour where it's like that white snow.
Before it melts. Yeah. So, I mean, the creativity has always been, how do we make it something they can relate to? Because I think the Christmas story is relatable. Like, people know Mary, Joseph, and we've always tried to stick with Mary, Joseph, Jesus, and not get into all the other characters. Because the fact is, for a lot of people coming at Christmas, they don't know, all the other characters. So I think for us, but the thing we really shifted 2 years ago is trying to say, how does a Christmas story, the way we're portraying it this year, really practically going to help someone coming who may be in the midst of, something hard going on in their life, maybe in the midst of something hard going on in their family, and really kind of say, how can this be practical? So, that looks different every year. And I think where we used to just do the Christmas thing, the last 2 years have been really practical to what's happening in society and what's happening in our world that is going to be helpful. So this year, obviously, same thing, like knowing that no matter who wins an election, there's going to be some wounds, there's going to be some divide. So how do we take the Christmas story and portray it in a way that there's going to be a healing and I think a hope, and a peace that, for a year that was filled with a lot of anxiety, a lot of pivoting, a lot of, what you thought was going to happen didn't happen. How do we kind of help wrap that up and kind of, through the Christmas story, but really through the Christmas story, portray the gospel and really try to help people take their next step. So I think for us, that's a change we made a few years ago of really saying, like, we don't want to just throw away Christmas. Like, we really want to make sure that we make it practical right into someone's life. So I think this year, even more, there is going to be that piece of, how do we, yes, there's all the, with COVID, but even with everything else that our country's had to face this year, and I think we'll keep facing, how do we kind of speak into that using the Christmas story? So as much as I think we're adapting content because of COVID, I think more about adapting content into the need that people have. Right now, even we've been talking a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of, and for a lot of our churches, we try to do well to speak to those different levels. And I think right now there is a common thread of everyone this year has had to kind of go back to the basics of like, you know, the basics of safety, and everyone's felt that anxiety and that pressure. So how do we really help speak to them? So I feel like we have a platform probably like we haven't had in many years to speak to a common theme that actually will probably hit the most amount of people, because everyone has been going through the same thing. You know, we all have different layers of how much it's affected us. So, you know, some financially, some obviously health, some have lost family and friends. So I think the depth of it is different, but I think we all have gone through a common, every one of our cities has had tension. Every one of our, you know, cities have lost people. Everyone in our church have lost friends and families. So I think there is a commonplace we haven't had before. So trying to speak to that, and not just probably speaking to a niche of people, but actually being able to speak to it broadly. So I would say more than a practical of how we're delivering it, because I think, you know, the same things like Michael said, we're going to be intentional at digital, we're going to be intentional in person. But I think the content behind what we do, I'm always challenging our team, is it's not just Christmas, it's how do we use the Christmas story to really help people, you know, move further in a relationship.
Yeah, I think that's,
go for it,
I
Michael.
think that just, yeah, I just think that's so huge, especially with people like us that are, I mean, you know, we have some fantastic creative teams and minds and things of that sort. I remember when I got here 10 years ago, we got here just right a little bit before Christmas, and the Christmas Eve service was really great. I mean, it was off the charts production level. And then they asked me, so what do you think of Christmas? I'm like, man, it was really good, but it kind of missed Jesus. Like it was cool. It was a really, really well-produced piece. I think we forgot what we came here for, you know? And so it was a real, you know, that was back when I was young and dumb. And I was also still in consultant mode, because I consulted with the church that I now work at forever. And I come in, I tell them what to do. I'm like, okay, you're the expert. I forgot that now that I'm employed, I'm no longer the expert. But I think it's so important. I think we can so easily get so creative and so cool and so hip and so whatever. And like people are like, oh yeah, that was awesome. But there's no heart change, no life change. Like, well, but why did we do it? So I think that's
yeah, I think for us, like the health of
really
what we do is we start there. So
yeah,
for years we used to be brainstorming creative ideas, brainstorming, you know, we still do the group of 50, shameless plug, like we brought in Stephen Brewster last year to even run brainstorming. Even this year, we're trying to, if COVID lets us, we're trying to actually rent out an ice rink.
Nice.
To try to shoot, just to have that, like, you know, feelings of brainstorm. But like last year before that, we brought like to brainstorming, here's the theme. And there wasn't pictures, there wasn't colors. It was something we had processed with a senior pastor before. But like last year, it was God with us, Emmanuel. And it was really saying like, you know, the generation right now is the loneliest generation. All that data was coming out, and it was the loneliest generation. And that's actually why I went to New York, was like, hey, in the midst, that's where I grew up, but like in the midst of a city, like actually has some of the highest rates of loneliness, and, you know, in the largest city in the country. So we like, that's just in a text box with copy. And that's where we start. There's not visuals. There's not cool, catchy phrases. It's more just like, there usually is a Christmas phrase. Like we're usually trying to tie it to peace on earth, thrill of hope, something that is going to attract people. But I think the big piece has been, we just start with that copy and we send it to everyone before. So it's like, we're not brainstorming a theme. Like we've landed it. We've landed the message. This is where it ends. So let's help tell the story now of how it gets there. So I think I think stripping back all that other stuff and just getting to like, what's the story we're going to tell and what's the theme is such a big piece of it.
That's
you
good.
Know, I think, if I may, Ben, I think we have a great opportunity this year as churches to really deliver the message of Jesus as we wrap up 2020 that has been so rough on all of us. It's been a hectic year for everyone. Anxiety, depression, changes in health, finances, everything. So this is an opportunity, a great opportunity. And I think the big change for us is going to be leverage that opportunity to introduce the hope of Jesus as we wrap up 2020, to give him hope for the 2021. Everybody's saying like, oh my gosh, 2020, when are you going to be over? So let's just close it with the hope of Jesus. And there's an opportunity there, a great opportunity. I'm excited about that. I see a lot of people struggling still, and things are not going to stop. So we have a big, big opportunity here as a church, all of us.
That's great. Matt, what about you guys up there in PA?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with sharing how it's going to be the same. and then I'll talk about the differences. So first of all, how it's going to be the same. One decision we made years ago was that we weren't going to do cantatas or shows, so we don't do like a big Christmas show or anything like that. It's really it's what we do every week. So we kind of let our people know, hey, that Christmas is going to be very similar. We're going to do what we do. It's going to be the Christmas version of what we do. And it's going to be, maybe we used to say it's our gathering on steroids. The problem with that is that we reached a few jump the shark moments where we just felt like it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, well, this is sort of a show. Even though we set out, we would have like a reset moment where we'd have to bring it back. But really, the elements are all going to be very similar. We want to make sure we worship. One of the things that our pastor has pushed us on for years is that Christmas songs are nice to listen to, but they're not always the most worshipful. So we've always tried to kind of hybrid. We always make sure we might add a Christmas tag onto a worship song, or do some things like that to make sure we actually worship, not just sing some songs. Does that make sense? So that's one of the things that we're going to continue to do. Also, message wise, 9 times out of 10, we will tie the Christmas story in somehow, but we are going to look for the felt need. And it's kind of like what you guys have been talking about. But we do that every year. We're kind of like, where are people at? What do they need the most? Because we want them to understand that, our main goal as a church is to introduce people to Jesus, and together fully follow him. So we realize Christmas is the introduction in many ways for people that are coming. And many of them, if they only show up at Christmas every year, they are always getting the same sermon. If they come for Christmas and Easter, they're getting the same sermon. They're getting the birth and then the death and resurrection, So we try to find a practical, look, Jesus can impact your life today. He impacts it for eternity, but he also impacts it today. So we always try to find those handles. So I'd say we're going to worship. We'll have some special elements there. It will be Christmassy, We've in the past been very video centric and we've done a lot of music with video stuff support in the past. What we're realizing is that online that doesn't always work. You need to be able to see the band, you need to be able to see the performers, you need to be able to see the worshipers. So I think that'll be a little hybrid, that'll be a little different this year, where last year we created these huge video walls behind everybody. And we went like, last year was vintage Christmas, and we got these old home videos from 80s, nice. 80s, 90s, 70s, and that was like playing behind us, and it was like this down home Christmas kind of feel. This year, but that sort of thing isn't going to work necessarily when people are looking on their computer or on a phone. So we're definitely going to think about that differently. Another thing that I realized is, this is part 2, what I'll say is, we have no idea what our pastor is going to preach on yet, and we may not for another couple weeks, if not another month or so. He has not yet hit his inspiration. So in the past, we used to let that frustrate us creatively, and we were like, well, we can't move forward until he does. We stopped doing that. We started saying, how can we just move forward and upwards inspire? So so we've begun our planning, and what we typically do is we come up with 3 different kind of angles that we could go, and we present him some options, and we'll do that we create video pitches, and we've used a lot of like the Donald Miller story brand stuff. That's been really helpful for us to figure out, who are we trying to reach, what do they need, and that helps us think through some different ways to package it. So we'll come to him with a look, a feel, like a basic overarch, like a story arc of the gathering with maybe a couple creative elements. And we could say, here's option 1, here's option 2, here's option 3. In the past, we used to pour all of our eggs in one basket, and we'd go and we'd share it. And then he'd say, okay, what else you got? And we were like, okay. So, and after scrambling quite a bit, once we started to do these video pitches, what we realized was he's very visual, our senior pastor, and he would immediately picture. He's also cynical. He's very visual. He's very cynical. So he would always picture the worst thing he'd ever seen the first time we pitched something, you know? So we realized we had to show him something different. So we'll show him the look of what a stage could look like. We'll show him, hey, we want to produce a video that looks like this or feels like this. The song will sound like this, you know? So, and by doing that, it took a lot of the guesswork out, where he was doing that. The first time we ever did these video pitches, we pitched 3 ideas and he went, I love all of them. And we're like, okay. And he goes, what do you like? And we're like, I'm not sure. We never thought about that before. You know?
That's great.
But it's just helped us maybe move forward a little bit more, and we can start to now see what bubbles to the top. And sometimes we end up doing a hybrid of all 3, but it's like, let's come to the table with 2 to 3 creative ideas.
That's good, Matt. And for leaders listening here, you may always be waiting for inspiration to come top down. You don't always have to wait. If it's not coming in a timely manner, lead up, give them some inspiration, help out your lead pastor, whoever it is making that decision in terms of the theme or the look or the feel. Take that initiative if you haven't already.
Ben, I'll say once we started to do that, we've never gone back. Like now our senior pastor is looking to us like, hey, what do you got for Christmas? Like, are you ready to go? You know what I mean? And we let him do a ton of the writing, but just the insights and it's not just a feeler. It's, hey, we want to talk about Emmanuel, God with us. And here's all the data. Here's the articles we're reading that talk about how lonely, you know, and kind of set those up. You know, and we always, we always have a favorite, and we do give 2 or 3 versions. We probably always.
You soft sell the other ones. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Marketing,
We may or may have not done that as well. So
well, I think there's 2 different types of house buyers. There's some that need the house staged, and there's some that need the house empty so they can see how they would do it. And you just got to figure out what your pastor's like. And we got a little bit of both. So we stage it for those that need to be staged, and we strip it out and say, dream with us for those that needed that. So
that's a great comparison, Michael. Hey, I'm gonna try to hit 2 more questions on the end here, so let me move along. But just hot take. That was a great conversation, guys. Love what you said there, Greg. Keep it practical. Focus on the theme of peace, because people need that. And you're also not a fan of the Christmas story, is what I heard you say. So that's the soundbite we are taking to promote this upcoming conversation. Thank you for that soundbite. One of the last 2 questions we're going to hit is, hey, what's one idea that you are super excited about that your church is doing for Christmas? And it could be the content, it could be marketing, it could be what we just talked about here, like work relationship and vision casting for your leader. What's something that if I could teach other churches how to do this one thing for Christmas, I'd be super excited.
One thing we started doing here at Christ Fellowship Miami for our online services, and something that is really cool and new, and I really didn't see any other church doing that. I might be wrong, but it's our hosting style. Our hosting style has changed for our online services, and we managed to do a YouTube style type of hosting, more fun, more informal, with memes, with ugly B-roll that is just from YouTube, and people have really embraced it well, because we're giving the information in a fun way, and in today's style. Like, I have teenagers, and I see they follow a lot of YouTubers, and when I see their productions are really homemade and they love it. So we're not declining we're not reducing our production value is not changing, but we are adding these elements of fun and B-roll that we just get from YouTube, and it's been really good. So we've gotten a lot of feedback, and people are loving it and just laughing. So I think that's capturing other people that are really embracing with the information of the church and receiving it well because of that. So yeah,
I would say I'd just go back to what we said before. I think the thing I've always shared with other churches is like, don't waste the Christmas opportunity and just do Christmas. Like, how do you really, think about that person that might be the one time they came to church that whole entire year. And what are you going to tell them that's worth it? That if they don't come back, it just made their life better. And or it might be the thing that brings them back. So I would say, and the other thing on the marketing, we've learned how to strip back less creativity and more clear messaging. So for us, it's Christmas at Christ Fellowship. Like, that's it. It doesn't matter what the theme is.
So huge.
Like, if we're going to put a postcard, which we are actually talking about maybe this year, because if you've seen, your mailbox is empty, and I feel like the things I do get.
That's not a bad idea.
we used to send like these really nice, like we'll send an invite to 50,000 people and it's like Thrill of Hope. And on the bottom corner somewhere, it said Christ Fellowship Church. And it's like, what? So just not, for us not being ashamed to just stick it out there and really say, hey, it's Christmas at Christ Fellowship. We're not going to sell you on any kind of theme. It's Christmas. So, and honestly, as we've done that, it's kind of found its own name for itself, as we've done that.
I would say
I know it has, because the hashtag Christmas at CF, you guys have squatted on that, and we've had to do a new one. Thank you very much, Greg.
Christmas with.
I will say I can't find our own kids. I can't find our kids on YouTube, but half our families are watching Christ Fellowship Miami Kids Services.
There we go for the win. Michael, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, you're good. I would say, to me, this is not even a Christmas idea. This is just a creative teams idea. But about 4.5 years ago, I really switched to making a huge push on collaboration. Before that, production would do their thing, music would do their thing, we would do our thing, and then they'd all come together and hopefully they fit. I tell you, collaborate. Now, it's going to mean you're going to have to get rid of your boundaries. You're going to not like, this isn't my area, and stake the ground and not be territorial. But it's beautiful. And one of the things that will really help in that, first off, you got to get humble. But secondly, invite other people in. Invite non-creatives, right? They don't have creatives in their title. Our Easter idea came from the person that really the main thrust of the idea came from the person that runs our cafe and bookstore. She's not the creative director. She's not an art director, but she's got great ideas. So invite new people, new voices, because you need it. And young, old, married, single, make sure you get some diversity in there as well.
Love it. What about you, Matt?
To all of those, we've kind of embraced all of those three things as well. We simplified our branding. We're just doing Christmas at LCBC, and that's been so much better. We're very collaborative and cross-departmental in our collaboration at LCBC. So that's been one. So a lot of those same ideas. But another thing that I would say that we realized that is our bread and butter, and that's life change stories. And I think that's been really a key part, both in promotions. We started to post some videos of people that said, hey, this was my first time I visited was at Christmas, and I've experienced this life change in my life ever since, and you just can't argue with a life that's been changed. And we often do the same thing. We've realized, man, we can create all of these things, but our gatherings almost always hinge on a great story. And so we always try to find someone who's just experienced Jesus and had a major transformation happen, and we share that story. We do that for Christmas. We do that for Easter. We do that a lot of times, but we kind of tie it all into this story. So if anything, you can argue with me theologically. You can argue all sorts of things. You cannot argue with a life that's been changed. You just can't.
That's good.
So we just found that's such a great way to lower people's guard a little bit, is just to share a life change story.
That's powerful. Want to echo what you said, Michael. We have at Christ Fellowship a guy named Tito who works as a production director at one of our campuses. And I can think of like the 4 home run ideas this past year have all come from Tito. So he's ideation. He just has incredible ideas. And at whatever meeting, I want him in at that meeting. And so whoever those people are, figure out your ideators at your church and bring them into your meeting for Christmas. For sure. The one thing for us, and I'll wrap it up with this, is I found that with Christmas, it's not only putting half of your creative juice there, but then the other half, the creative juice, to your callback series for the new year. So when people are in your service and they finally got pulled with a family member to show up, and you say, we think you should come back next week because of this. What is that this? Oftentimes we have nothing left in the tank. And it's, I don't know, it's the new year and you need a new you. Come back. And we have nothing to offer them. So don't spend it all on Christmas. Keep a little bit for your callback series, whatever that is, down the road. I'm going to wrap up our time here. Thank you to our incredible panelists. You guys have learned from them, but beyond just learning from them, I encourage you to follow them. So they shared who they are, follow who they are, because you'll learn from them beyond this conversation as well. Thank you again, panelists, for joining.
Ben,
Michael.
Let me add one thing, because it's kind of sticking to me. And this is to the people that are watching, the creative teams, production teams. Don't miss Christmas. Forget the production. Forget all that. don't forget to take some time for you and the story and the God and the Jesus that was born for you, because he loves you. And man, we can get so busy with the show and what we're doing that it just goes by. And your family, Christmas might be the worst season for them because they don't see you. So make sure you take some time. I don't care if it's an hour, it's an hour. If it's a day, it's a day. But make sure you take some time, and don't miss Christmas.
Yeah, that's powerful. We spend so much time drawing other people to Jesus during the Christmas season that we sometimes sabotage our own selves in that.
Sure.
Thank you for calling that out, Michael. Again, join us again next month. We're going to be talking about kids. So we're talking about making incredible worship experiences, and we're going to be looking at it from the prism of families and kids. I don't think there's any harder position right now than a family pastor or a kids director, as they're looking to reopen and they're trying to keep kids spacious. That is an impossible task. So we'll be talking about that next month as well. We'll see you guys then.